Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Probably the weakest in the entire franchise. Let's go with the story. So, we start off with Harry back at the Dursleys' house, waiting to hear from his friends who haven't written him all summer. The Dursleys, of course, have been nice enough to give him his own room, since they're scared that he's going to turn him into a pig or kill him. Which you can't really blame Harry for, because, they were abusive psychopaths. So Harry is waiting and finds out that his letters have been blocked by a little critter named Dobby, who doesn't want him to go back to school, because Hogwarts is going to be very dangerous for him, and we don't know why. Circumstances conspire to where Harry ends up living with the Weasleys for a couple of weeks before going back to school, where we actually get to see part of the Weasley world, which is really nice. And Harry ends up back at Hogwarts via flying car. Turns out that there's a critter going around the school petrifying people, making them turn to pseudo-stone. And that this creature is being released by the heir of Slytherin. And they're trying to figure out who the heir of Slytherin is before it actually kills somebody. Turns out that the heir of Slytherin is actually a book that's manipulating Ginny Weasley, who is Ron's little sister, into releasing the creature to try to kill Muggleborns. It turns out the book was actually written by a guy named Tom Riddle, who was a 16-year-old Lord Voldemort. Harry ends up in the Chamber of Secrets to face off against Tom Riddle as a ghost memory thingy, and the monster that's turning people into stone. And then he wins because of a bird and a hat. Alright, that was a pretty vague description of it, I know, but there's so much going on in this story that it's kind of hard to get all the points. But let me start with what I mentioned at the end of my last video, the 3 Jar Jars. This book, and consequently the film, introduced several new characters. Let's start with Dobby. Now in the book, Dobby is what's called a house elf, and it turns out that a lot of prestigious wizarding families actually have house elves, which work like slaves. The only way that a house elf can be freed is if their owner gives them a piece of clothing. So Dobby in the book is kind of irritating, but he's also kind of fun because he's this cute, sad, pathetic little thing that you almost feel sorry for. He also makes a few appearances in the later books, including a climactic movement in the 7th book where he actually dies. In the film, he doesn't work as well because the character was very badly designed and badly animated. He hits what's called the uncanny valley effect, where he looks so lifelike but is still not quite there, that he actually ends up looking creepy rather than cute. This is a shame because the film actually came out in 2002, where we also got what's arguably the best CG character that has ever been made, Gollum from the Lord of the Rings series. Second one is Gilderoy Lockhart. Now, it's a running joke in the Harry Potter books that every year they have a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. And this year we get a guy named Gilderoy Lockhart, who has written a ton of books about how he stopped this magical monster, and he's been fighting this vampire, and he destroyed this evil witch, and how he's pretty much just the most awesome thing ever. On top of that, the books describe him as being very handsome and actually very full of himself. It turns out that the only spell he's really good at is memory charms, and he's actually been taking credit for other witches and wizards' work by memory charming them and made himself into a celebrity. In the book, I love Gilderoy Lockhart. I think he is such a fun character. He's foppish without being overly obnoxious. He just likes to be out there, an extrovert. He loves people to tell him, "Oh, you're so great. Oh, you're so beautiful. I won Witch Weekly's Best Smile Award 3 times running." He doesn't end up being that great of a wizard. He's been lying this whole time, and I love that. And what I hate about him is that at the end of the book, he ends up mind-wiping himself, and he's written out of the entire series. We get a cameo of him in, I think, the 5th book, but other than that, he's gone, and we're done with him. And I hate this because it showed how the wizarding community works, how close it's like the real Muggle community with celebrities and book signings. I kind of think of him as just like he's basically the Oprah of the wizarding world. It's really fun. And I hate to see him written out. In the film, the actor who portrays him just doesn't put that much effort into it, so his lines fall really flat. And instead of being so out there and extroverted, he just seems like he's just there for the paycheck. And it's really sad that they took such an outrageous character and watered him down. My third Jar Jar is Moaning Myrtle. Now, in the book, I hated Moaning Myrtle. I thought she was obnoxious. She's a ghost that lives in the girls' bathroom and was actually killed by the creature in the Chamber of Secrets like 50 years ago. And Ron, Harry, and Hermione have to deal with her because they have to brew a special potion in that bathroom. And the reason they can do it in this bathroom is because no one ever goes in there because of Moaning Myrtle. Because Moaning Myrtle is so obnoxious. The actress who portrays her gives her this screechy, whiny, nasty voice that just irritates me at every level. It's not a good character. All the stakes in this book aren't very high. They say that the creature is a killer. They say that this creature can kill all these people, but we never see him kill. It turns people into stone, and the reason that they give that is because apparently it has this glare that if you look directly into its eyes, you're dead. But I guess if you look at its reflection or through a ghost or a camera, you turn to stone. And that stake isn't even all that high because they say in the beginning that they have a way to cure people who have been turned to stone. They just have to wait for these plants to mature, and then they're able to cure them. Also, it just doesn't make any tension if this creature isn't really killing anybody. It's the idea that if the stakes aren't that heavy, then the adventure isn't that grand. If the characters don't feel like they're in any real danger, then it's hard to get invested in them. And in this one, it's hard to get invested in anybody. Especially when the characters that keep getting petrified are characters that are either barely introduced to us or tangentially involved with our main characters. We have some kid from Hufflepuff, who I think this is like his only appearance, so we won't even go into him. We have the groundskeeper's cat that he calls Mrs. Norris. It's just weird. We get Colin Creevey, who is introduced to us in this book and in this film as a Harry Potter fanboy who likes to take pictures of Harry Potter and his friends. The ghost, one of the ghosts, nearly headless Nick, who actually in the book gets a really fun scene where we get to go to his birthday and learn a little bit about ghost culture, and he's actually fleshed out. He's ghost. And then they actually, if the thing gets Hermione in a kind of pathetic way to really get the stakes going up. So overall, this book just falls flat with its own story. Now, the parts that I do like about it is that it does introduce to us a few concepts that become a running theme in the book series. First, we get introduced into the concept of this pseudo-racism in the wizarding community, where there are some wizards who don't like other wizards who were not born into wizarding families. These are called mudbloods. And because they have muggle parents, or they interbreed with muggles, or whatever, they're considered lesser and a disgrace to wizards. This becomes a later part because it turns out Lord Voldemort actually has a muggle father. We also get this idea that Voldemort is trying to come back. In fact, the diary that Ginny finds is actually what's called a Horcrux, which comes into play in like the 6th or 7th book. That this is the way Lord Voldemort has made it so he could come back. Now, we get introduced to two characters that are involved in this that also become bigger parts in the main story that I actually really like. We get introduced to Tom Riddle that I mentioned before, and he's introduced in the form of memories, but he will give us more backstory into Lord Voldemort, which makes that a more credible and fleshed out villain, which anytime they can flesh out a villain to me is a positive aspect, because so many times it's, especially in children's literature, it's he's the bad guy because he's wearing the black armor. We also get his henchman, Lucius Malfoy. Now, Lucius is an interesting concept too because They're kind of villains, but their plans fail so often that it's kind of hard to take them seriously. And we see this as an interesting contrast to characters who are like that, like Bebop and Rocksteady from the Ninja Turtles. Just the Malfoys are trying their best to try to please Lord Voldemort, but they keep failing. And at the end, we actually see them turn on Voldemort because they can't do it anymore. So that's kind of interesting. We also I love how just over the top that actor was who played Lucius Malfoy in the films. He is so I am better than everybody because I am rich and have the most fabulous hair. I love him. He's great. He's a great villain. Man, Lucius Malfoy, he does it. He's awesome. Overall, though, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, not the best. It gets better in both film and book. This is actually one of the few books that I tell people if you could read the Wikipedia on. I mentioned this in the last video, but I didn't get around to talking about it. I will say a word about broomstick riding in Quidditch. Personally, I think Quidditch is the dumbest thing ever. Basically, what we have here is it's pseudo soccer played on broomsticks in the air. So we've got people who are trying to get a ball through some certain hoops. We've got someone trying to guard the hoops. We've got this magical ball that can be bounced around between people and knocked into other people to knock players off their brooms. That's a really cool game. I'd watch that all day long. The part I don't like about it is Harry's part. He's what's called a seeker, which means that there's a little golden ball called the golden snitch that zooms around everywhere, and a seeker has to try to catch this thing. Now, if a seeker catches it, he wins his team 150 points and the game is over. They even say it flat out in the first movie and in the first book that if Harry catches the golden snitch, he wins the game for them. That means that every time they play Quidditch, it's Harry's job to score the winning goal and win the game. That is such a cheesy plot device to make Harry special. That's such a cheesy way to just keep him involved in this game. The only way that they can win is if Harry wins. That's it. The whole game rides on Harry. They explain later that in the professional Quidditch leagues that catching the golden snitch doesn't necessarily mean a win because the goalies and the players are playing so hard that they're scoring so many points that sometimes it comes between either you catch that snitch or you lose. But in the smaller leagues, it's whoever catches the snitch wins. And that makes the whole game pointless and just silly. On top of that, for the most part, the game doesn't really come into play. The Quidditch games are really just a place for the main plot to happen. In the first one, the Quidditch that they show is where Snape is supposedly jinxing Harry's broom. So it shows tension that Snape might be the bad guy. That's basically the only thing that contributes to the plot. In the second one, Dobby makes one of the little balls that are supposed to go after people, curses it so it only goes after Harry, and breaks Harry's arm. When Harry's lying on the field and he's half conscious with the snitch in one hand and a broken arm in the other, we get Gilderoy Lockhart coming out onto the field saying, "Oh, I can fix it," and tries to fix it, and he removes the bones from Harry's arm. This puts Harry in the hospital in time to see Colin Creevey come in. That's it. It was just an excuse so we could see that Colin was turned to stone. And to emphasize that Dobby is trying to stop Harry, and to emphasize how absolutely inept Gilderoy Lockhart is. These things were already established. They could have been established anywhere else. We don't need these scenes to do it. It's just they just use Quidditch as a way for the plot to happen. By I think the fifth movie, they completely removed Quidditch. We don't even see the game anymore. We see broomsticks later on as a way to travel, which that's cool, but we don't get this game, which I think they actually saw it as something useless and stupid. So that's my thing with Quidditch. That is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Next week, the films get better, the books get better, and we talk about Harry Potter and the Prisoner from Azkaban. or Harry Potter and his latent daddy issues. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.